Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our community, our December edition of our community. My name is Andy Thorton, President and CEO of the Greater Peoria YMCA. We're missing somebody today. My co-host Rocky Ziegler is unable to be with us today, but happy to have Jake Hamann here with us today, who I believe your title, Jake, is the founder and executive director of the Peoria Innovation Alliance. Is
That's
that right?
correct. Yeah, glad to be here.
Got it right. So I looked it up properly on the internet. And for those of you out there with the I've Decided community, you'll recognize that our weekly winning word this week is advantage. And the definition for advantage is a condition or circumstance that puts one in a favorable or superior position. So I've got Jake here this week as my guest. And I think we can tie this word into the work that you're doing around innovation, Jake, and I'm really excited about that. So what I'd like to do is just learn from you all the efforts that have been going on in our community around innovation that help give our community an advantage over others like us and those that are around us. So I thought maybe to get started, could you just define what is innovation for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't know. I think there's a lot of definitions around innovation. It can be a variety of things to a variety of people. I'm looking at our overview. The way that we describe it, right, is a quote from a guy named Scott Birkin. So for us, innovation is significant positive change. It's a result. It's an outcome. It's something you work towards. So yeah, for us, right, we believe that while it's, like I said, often associated with technology, it's merely approaching a problem from a renewed perspective and achieving a significant change. So the technology really component of it is kind of evergreen now, right? Everything that we do today in today's society has some type of technology component.
Sure.
So no real need to call it, technology related. It's about making significant positive change. So that's kind of how we describe it.
Well, that's interesting because, I don't necessarily, I'm not an expert in innovation by any chance, at least I don't consider myself to be, but I always think about the technology piece too. And the way that you described it, can you repeat that definition again?
Absolutely. So innovation is significant positive change. It's a result, it's an outcome, it's something you work towards.
And so significant positive change, that has to do with anything.
It does.
Any part of our life.
It does,
right?
yeah.
Whether it be business related, personal related, spiritually related, anything that we do, innovation could be or probably should be.
Yeah, and I think, to your credit, I think you are an innovator. I think most of us that are, participating in these various initiatives, things around town, right? They're looking at the second part of this was, right, just approaching a problem from a renewed perspective, right? Of, the way we've been doing it or something we tried in the past isn't working. So we're going to look at it from a different angle and see if we can figure it out.
That's an interesting perspective. We've been doing this for 2 minutes and you've already enlightened me. So I'm going to change my self-description. I am an innovator.
Absolutely.
I like that. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that with me. So let's talk about then the Peoria Innovation Alliance, your business, your organization, your creation. What exactly is the Peoria Innovation Alliance doing to help grow the awareness, the engagement, and the effectiveness of innovation in our region?
That's a great question, and it's probably a really long answer. There's a lot of different things that we're doing.
We still got about 17 minutes
Okay,
left,
all right, so we're good. So we have really 5 different pillars of what we're doing within the Innovation Alliance, that working groups, if you will. So, and then there's some projects which we'll talk about too. But our 5 pillars are education, entrepreneurial education.
Sure.
So helping anybody from kindergarten and youth through adulthood around becoming an innovator, becoming an entrepreneur, those types of things. The second one is a seed fund and an accelerator. So we're still in the midst of working on that with some other entities. Of one of the things that's been lacking in our region for several years is capital, right? To help companies, early stage companies get started, not your traditional banks or VC or venture capitalists. So how do we pull together a small, or not a small pool of money, but a substantial pool of money that can be invested in small amounts into many companies? So essentially diversifying risk. The third piece is Peoria Made, which we'll talk about, which is really a platform, both an online platform as well as a physical storefront to help enable our makers, artisans, and artists, which we can talk about.
That just opened recently, right?
It did, yeah. We just had our first official open day on Monday, and then last Monday.
Sure.
Then Peoria on Purpose, which is our storytelling effort, and that's one of the things, kind of where this started was, and kind of ties to this of, when I'd go travel outside of Peoria and people would ask where you're from, and you tell them you're from Peoria, it was met with some cynicism or some like, oh, I heard this bad thing or this negative thing.
Right.
But having knowledge of what was happening in the community, you're always able to kind of combat that and be like, actually, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about this, this, and this. But if people don't know, right, both our own regional people as well as from a national perspective, then you can never combat that. And we continue to perpetuate this negative perception. Right. And then the last piece is just around the Smart City Innovation District effort, which we've established with the help of the city in downtown Peoria, 9-block area. That's kind of our innovation district. So those are our 5, key initiatives or key pillars, and everything else kind of falls underneath one of those.
Okay. So let's then dig into this downtown innovation district. I know very little about it.
Yep.
I know it's 9 city blocks. Is that right?
Correct.
And it's for the recruitment of new business. Is that fair to say?
Fair to say, yep.
And it's there for it'd be a perfect place for startups and entrepreneurials to kind of get themselves started. Took that off the website, just doing some of the research. But what exactly is this downtown innovation district supposed to do?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I've got that a lot of, really for us and the way we approached it was primarily a placemaking activity.
Okay.
Right, of saying we're serious about, as a community, right, we're serious about innovation, what it means for our future, and we're going to define a 9-block area to concentrate activity, knowing, at least with the area that we picked, there were already things in the works or things going on.
Right.
And innovation districts are not new. They've been done across the globe. Very similar types of things where you have a concentration of activity, and it's really just to bring highlight to that and to showcase it. So within the 9 blocks that we chose and went to the city council with, you have OSF's new headquarters, their telemedicine facility. You have our space that we just opened, the Riverfront Museum, Ameren, the Innovation Hub, the proposed Innovation Hub, AT&T. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that make for a really great area. Another thing too with this is that we've looked at, there's a movement called Strong Towns, which is a national movement around bringing density back to the urban core. So into your downtown, right? We hear urban sprawl, those types of things. Cities that are having success and growing right now have put a focus on their downtown area.
So when you say bringing density back to the downtown, you mean people physically living in the downtown community?
Living, working, entertainment, those types of things. That it becomes, if you look at our historical maps and all those types of things, I think the population we have now, if you scale it back, was concentrated in a much smaller area. And that happens in downtown. So a lot of our cities that we compare ourselves to or try to measure against, they've done that. So, and there's been a lot of work happening in that space for the past several years with the redevelopment of the warehouse district, those types of things. But we kind of looked at the central business district has been kind of forgotten in that core area in downtown. So that's kind of why we picked that 9-block area. So to your point, the goal is to bring in some companies, to bring in workers. A lot of that's already going to be happening with the things that are going on. But what else can we do to bring more of those things together, whether it be places to eat, entertainment options, but also the workers. And that's where we've had some conversation with like Verizon and some others around increasing Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi, those types of things in that area.
Important things that people want to have while they're in those areas.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. That's really interesting. And I think it does make a lot of sense, and the city of Peoria has a lot of advantages. And I hear, in my circles as well, there tends to be more conversation about what we don't have versus celebrating the successes that we do have. And I think we do have a lot of successes to celebrate. So I appreciate your vision for that. And I know that you push that dialogue a lot in the conversations that we've had. And the other things that I've seen is, we really need to be collectively working to share in the successes of all of us for this community, and really helping people not only outside of our region, but in our region to understand how many great things are here and how it can benefit them personally and professionally.
Absolutely. Just a side note on that real quickly. There's an organization called Revitalize or Die. It's kind of a abrupt organization name, but what they're doing is pretty interesting. And we've actually reached out to them, have a call with them on Thursday about hosting a civic pride workshop here in Peoria.
Okay.
So this guy is really good at, talking about, restoring people's belief and interest and support, as you're mentioning, around their community, and is now kind of going out and doing these workshops in different communities. So we're going to host one here, not sure when yet, but we'll tackle the very thing you're talking about around the people here understanding all the positive things that we do have, not focusing on what we don't have, and how do you go out and promote that?
Right, because you can't, it's like anything else. If you're trying to change culture within any organization, if you don't change it inside first, the outside's never going to be able to realize it. They're not going to see it.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't become real. It just becomes a message, I think, at that point. So I think it's, we talk about that even at the YMCA in our circles as we're trying to develop our culture. It has to start internally before it's going to become successful outside of the organization.
Absolutely.
So I definitely agree with that. But this work isn't all just Peoria Innovation Alliance.
No, absolutely
right?
not.
You've got a ton of partners, and I was looking on the Innovation Alliance website page, and you have a lot of them listed on there. But I also know that the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council, the Chamber of Commerce, city government, all of those places are really embracing this and supporting this. So how does that all work when you have all of those different entities who have their own visions and their own responsibilities? How do you guys all come together to make sure that you're doing this in a way that's going to prove to be successful?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it kind of all goes back to, I guess, how we label ourselves as an organization or an entity. And what we're doing has been somewhat defined now through the Kauffman Foundation out of Kansas City.
Okay.
So they're kind of the leading entrepreneurial foundation in the United States. They do a lot of programming, education things, but they have coined this term, which we've been doing it for several years, but there wasn't a name for it. It's this entrepreneurial ecosystem building.
Okay.
Right. So ecosystem building is really this networked approach, right? And that's where we bring in the partners of, we're all just different nodes, right? And what we're trying to do as an organization is connect them together. So, and really the entrepreneurs then they're at the center of that network. So with these other organizations, I think, I'm proud to say too, I think we've seen this unprecedented collaboration, right, amongst these various organizations over the past year or so, getting involved in, initiatives that we're working on together, where we're partnering on things. A good example is this Greater Peoria Homecoming event we had last Friday.
Right.
It was a collaboration between ourselves, the EDC, the Chamber in their Young Professionals group, and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Right, those four groups, or the other three, right? That just doesn't happen a lot,
right?
But it's really been good to see this collaboration, and we put on an event to attract some of our alumni and past residents back to the area, show them the good stuff that's going on, with the hope that they might look at the area a little bit differently and change their perspective, and think about moving back or telling their friends, that type of thing. So. And that has been repeated. That collaboration has continued to be repeated across several different initiatives and things that are going on, currently right now in the area.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you talked earlier about, part of your work in the Innovation Alliance is to develop capital, money, right? So that you can help, share that with some of these startup businesses and entrepreneurs, help get them off the ground, is what I'm assuming is what it's used for. So in my line of work at the YMCA in the nonprofit sector, the charitable sector, we're finding and we're seeing, and this isn't just a local thing or a local trend, it's a national trend. The more collaboration that takes place, it seems like there's more willingness to from funding sources to get behind those types of things.
Yep.
And I know we're seeing that here locally with some of our local foundations and things like that. When we start to apply for grants, we're really being, you get scored better if you've got reasonable and smart collaborations to help do this. Rather than duplicating services across the community, let's work together and strengthen the services so that we're really having some lasting impact.
Yeah. And
So I imagine that those collaborations that you described from an innovation perspective are probably helpful in helping you to develop some of that capital. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true from a national perspective too. We're working with the Kauffman Foundation as well as 4 other states on something we can't announce yet, but will be pretty exciting for the area that's going to be coming up.
Nice tease there.
Yeah, it's going to be coming up in April. It'll be globally recognized, which is great. But we're finding the same thing of, you put a memorandum of understanding, an MOU together across 4 or 5 organizations and go apply for a grant, you have a lot better chance. So yeah, we're seeing that here locally too, specifically in our partnership with the EDC. And when you go to the federal level for grants through like the EDA and the Department of Commerce, right, it looks great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just getting people to understand too when you're when you're trying to help these startups of the diversifying risk. That's been a challenge, at least in our area. There have been some things that haven't gone so well, so some people are somewhat hesitant to invest in startups, right? But I think there's a model that works well. We kind of have a sister city, if you will, in terms of our efforts, which is Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Okay, yep. heard
Very
that thrown
similar
around before.
size. Yeah, they've got a lot of great things going on. They raised, with their seed fund, they raised $1.7 million.
Wow.
And then they invested that money in 40 companies over 4 years. And then just this last year, right, 2/3 of those companies are still in existence.
Okay.
They've created almost 100 jobs, direct jobs, and then they've created a couple hundred indirect jobs through service providers and things like that. And I'd say that's successful, right? I mean, they've done what they set out to
Sounds
do.
successful to me.
Yeah, and now I think it's been successful enough that they're out raising $30 million to do another fund.
Wow.
Because people loved what they did.
How much was the first go around?
1.7
To 30.
to 30. So big jump, but they
Yeah.
believed in what they did and they did some great things with that money. So that's kind of what we're targeting is a small amount to start. Let's put, and with that it works of putting $20,000 into, multiple companies for a small exchange of equity, and then you grow from there. So
Awesome. That is really interesting. The next thing I want to talk about, I know we're getting short on time, but the Peoria Innovation Hub,
Yep.
which is the old ICC building downtown, right? And I know that there was a press conference a few weeks ago. The governor was in town. A lot of dignitaries were in town. A lot of high-powered people are really excited about this. And the one thing that I've learned through my research is that Innovation Hub is a part of an Illinois Innovation Network, which there are 15 of those
Correct.
across the state.
yeah.
So my question would be for that is, what is the hub going to do for innovation in our community? But even beyond that, this whole innovation network, what's going to happen across the state? And will the things that happen in our hub here be supportive to other things that are going on across the state and vice versa?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, it's part of a larger network. We've recently got a little bit more engaged and involved in that. It's primarily been OSF, the EDC,
Okay.
And ICC have been kind of heading that up. So we've stepped in and offered our help from the grassroots side of getting the entrepreneurial community engaged and involved in that effort.
Okay.
So working very closely with them, we're meeting on a weekly basis, planning things. By the way, I just have to make a plug for, we have
Yeah, please do.
a holiday mixer coming up next Wednesday
Okay.
from 5 to 7 at the Space down on Adam Street.
Okay.
And it's really intended to be, we call collisions between the dignitaries, the business people, but also the entrepreneurs. Right? Of getting everybody in the same room, just casual, hang out, and then we're treating it as just kind of a, hey, here's what's coming in 2020. And let's celebrate the success we've had this year. It's been a monumental year, I think, in terms of the growth of our overall ecosystem.
Yep.
So let's celebrate it, right, and get together. So, but to your point, yeah, this Peoria location is one of many across the state. They're primarily in state university areas. We were one of the only ones that is not, but we do have that great relationship with the University of Illinois College of Medicine, as well as OSF and everything that's going on at Jump and everything. So it makes sense. I think we're kind of out in front of most of the others, which is great.
That's good. It's always good to be a leader.
It is good to be a leader. So, but I think that the intent is exactly what you said, is that as we build out programming and even just the blueprint that we lay in terms of operations, funding, the components of the space itself, whether that be co-working, a maker space, those types of things, can serve as a blueprint, to the other locations. And I think that will be the same as the other places come online, right? If they have relationships with corporations, or they're teaching classes that might be interesting here, that it's intended to be this kind of sharing network across the state, that where we can share resources and programming and things like that. So that's happening from a state perspective. We're also working with, our organization specifically are working with Kauffman Foundation. They just released a new business plan for America, really, essentially, that's focused on growing entrepreneurship. And it's targeted at policymakers at the local, state, and national level. What can those entities do, right, in terms of policy changes or enhancements or whatever to help support the continued growth of entrepreneurship?
That's an interesting point, because connecting that kind of private industry with the public and with legislation is really, I imagine, pretty critical, right, from that policy standpoint. And I don't know that I didn't necessarily draw that linkage just until you brought it up. So it's good to hear that that's going on. I know that advocacy work is important. I know we do it in our line of work, where we spend time in Springfield and in DC, and those relationships are absolutely critical. And I know that when I saw there's a video out there of the press conference that took place at the Innovation Hub. The governor was there, Ryan Spain was there, Jahan Gordon Booth was there. All of them were there, and they were a part of the video too. And I know they were really excited about it, and some of the messages they were sending. This is going to really change the landscape for Peoria over time. So I know there's a lot of energy about it, but it sounds like it's still kind of being developed.
It is, and I think, and I think the key thing, and Philip, our board president, has kind of coined this term of culture before concrete. Right? Like the physical space, and there's lots of articles and things about the physical space is always important for a community, but you have to have that culture built first. So, which, even though everybody would like to be ready to do construction like right now, it's important for us to continue to build the culture, the ecosystem, making the connections, holding the events, getting everybody together, so that when the doors do open, everybody's ready to go. It's not a build it and they will come. It's build it and they're already here type of thing. So, and that's what we're intending to do. So.
We have a phrase in my line of work where culture eats strategy, right? If you don't have the right culture, it doesn't matter what your strategy is. You're going to struggle no matter what. Well, Jake, any final thoughts on innovation that we didn't cover that you'd like to share? How do people get involved?
So we have a lot of ways to get involved. We have our various websites. We have social media channels. There's ways for people to volunteer their time, to mentor, those types of things. So one thing we didn't get a chance to talk about, just briefly touch on, is our space on Main Street, Peoria Made.
Yeah, Peoria Made.
Just opened at 315 Main. It's kind of a hodgepodge of things, but it's intended to be kind of a community space. So the front portion is this retail incubator. We're working with 15 local artists and artisans right now that have their work displayed there. Great place to do Christmas shopping if you want to do local stuff, right? All unique, one of a kind types of things from our local artisans and makers. We're calling it a co-thinking lounge. So smaller, where people could work. In the back, we have a learning lab, all whiteboard walls, that's intended for education opportunities. So people want to teach classes around entrepreneurship or anything, right? The space is available either where we're going to host, or people can pay, to rent the room. And then the back, we're actually working with Peoria Life to have a remote podcast studio that people can come in and utilize and be able to maybe start their podcasts, figure out what it's like, that type of thing. So, that space is at 315 Main, open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and then we're shooting for 10 to 2
So
on
would
Saturdays.
that space be available for, let's say someone has a youth program, an after-school program with kids, somebody that I know, obviously, the YMCA has those. Would that be a space where we could bring a group of kids and have them introduced to this whole concept and is that something that could happen?
Yeah, that's where we were just talking about that this morning around making a space for introductory types of things.
Yeah.
Like we have a partnership with River City Labs, the maker space.
Okay.
Right there, we're talking about putting a 3D printer in there. Right. Well, that's not a place to go do heavy, like a lot of 3D printing. But if people are interested in it and want to just learn about it, okay, come to an introductory class, you know, for 45 minutes, and the guys from River City Labs are going to talk to you about what 3D printing is, how it's used, that type of thing. And then really, we want to use that space as a jumping off point for the next phase, right? You come in and get educated on it, and then we're going to connect you with a resource that can help you take it to the next thing. Some people may not want to, that's fine. But here's River City Labs, and they're gonna, if you want to get more involved, go talk to them.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Jake, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate your time today. I appreciate your knowledge. I appreciate your passion for this. And I look forward to not only seeing success, but finding out how I can be a part of it, and even our organization, the YMCA. How can we get connected to this work and be supportive of, of elevating the community of Peoria and helping to make it better.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. I want to wish everyone out there a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and we look forward to seeing you next month on Our Community.
PeoriaLife.com